Hey guys, this will be video 12 for the how to restore a vintage Gibson, almost said Les Paul, an SG. This body is a 1969, and in case you're just tripping up on this video series, there's quite a bit of videos related to, doing this restoration. And it's very close to being finished, but I've run into about 4 or 5 different issues that I need to do this video primarily for the client. So Eric, you have probably already received a message from me letting me know that this video is live and to help me clarify some of these things that need to be done, because everything was going great right up to the point to where I started installing, the pickups and the pick guard and all this jazz, and ran into some issues that just the client needs to address. I would know how to address it if it were my guitar, but I don't want to just make those assumptions. So with that said, let's start out on a happy note, and then talk about the progress, and then I'll talk about some of these minor things that are just. This is typical when you're restoring an old vintage guitar and you're kind of building what some people would call like a parts caster, or if you're building a Harley, it's called a basket case, where you're buying everything in baskets or 5-gallon buckets, and then you're digging through there, and you're building your Harley based on a bunch of parts in a basket. So with that said, let's do a flyby and look at the guitar. It's really beautiful. It has a real cool, warm, vintage look going on. Although it is a little bit clean. It's a little bit pretty right now. I don't really want to distress it. I would prefer the client did that. But my agreement with Eric was that I would kind of take it up to just a real pretty warm glow, and then blend everything in. And I'll start talking. I'll spend about 10 or 15 minutes talking about stain colors, and let me go ahead and get this out of the way in the event I forget. This mother of pearl, if you look at it from a distance, that's more what you see in the guitar. Sometimes it's a little bit dark. Sometimes it turns almost like a silver gold. But nonetheless, from a 30 inches away, and getting it away from that halogen light, it's stunning. I mean, it's positively beautiful. But then there'll be certain times when you turn it in the light or get it real close to this halogen light, they'll turn kind of a deep mustard green yellow. So don't let that deceive you. It really is beautiful, the pearl. So anyway, with that said, binding, everything is scraped in order. Looks to me, from holding it in my hand, looks like a Gibson. It looks like it came straight from the 60s. Okay, we got our waffle back tuners that I'm not crazy about them. They're old. They're fairly worn, and they're not holding tune as well as a brand new set of tuners, but they're holding tune. And if you're a player and you're playing along, maybe before you do a song, you're going to have to tune up each time. So, but that's just 55-year-old tuners that are aged and whatnot. But nonetheless, small price to pay for what a striking appearance of that, it actually looking like it's an authentic 69 guitar. Okay, so and Eric and I have already talked about that hey, if you ever wanted to upgrade, change those later on. It's not that big of a deal. Although I will say this, the screw pattern is a little bit wider on the waffle backs, and I don't know if these are Grover. I would think they are, but I used to use the Grover Imperials on a lot of the vintage jazz guitars, and I don't remember the spacing, the center to center spacing on those, but I always thought that they were the same. I may be wrong. So anyway, just proceed with caution there, Eric, if you decide to change these out. I think the bottom one is in the correct location if you were to convert over to the Kluson, but I believe the top one would have to be brought in just a little bit. So walk in the park for someone who just does general guitar maintenance. Bone nut, perfectly fit. I say perfectly. I still got to do just a little bit of shaping on the bottom here, but the width is 1 in 23/32. It's really cool. It's vintage correct. I was thinking it was 1 in 11/16, but I was able to achieve 1 in 23/32 and even shape the binding down to actually kind of like under 40 thousandths, which I think is really, really beautiful. And I was even able to shape this binding down. If you look real close, you can see I'm about 60 thousandths up here. I turn that curve at 60 thousandths. And then once I get down to the nut, I'm just a little bit thinner to complement what's going on at the neck, which I think is really cool to see that. And we're the 5-ply binding on the top. Okay. Uh, the mother of pearl is actually Filipina from the Philippines. I had called this Australian gold once, but this is harvested in the Philippines. And I have this exact same pearl on my 59 black replica, uh, Les Paul replica upstairs. And there's no sense in bringing that down and showing it, but very consistent in the gold. The frets are actually CA glued in. These are Jescar. I think they're number 104s. They're the medium jumbo medium, but they just feel like they don't feel like the old Dunlop or whatever they were back in the 70s. They're just a great fret. I think they're wow, 18% nickel or 3% nickel. I should know that. It's funny. But regardless, I'll get you those specs on that. But these are what a lot of the custom builders are using for their guitars. Side dots are per vintage 59 specs, the dimensions, and then I actually lay those out by hand with a pointer, a little pointer, and a hot tool. I heat it up with a butane torch. I kiss those locations, and then I actually go ahead and make the indentation, and then I come in and just drill everything out by hand, stepping up from a 1/16 inch bit. I think it ends up being a 3/32 inch. It's definitely under 1/8. I'm pretty sure it's a 3/32 inch diameter. And these up here in these locations, typically you can't reach them with a handheld drill. So you'll have to take a bamboo skewer and jet glue, CA glue, one of your final drill bits against at the end of a bamboo skewer, and you'll be drilling these by hand by spinning them, especially on a Les Paul or a replica. So, and you can see that right there. That's one of the first sins that I'm going to be discussing in the restoration. That it's actually it's not serious, but it's just one of those things that the client's got to tell me what he wants me to do. Okay, the client is aware of this. I ran into some problems with the stain color on the front end. I was planning on using the brown mahogany. Now, what you're seeing underneath this ridiculous halogen light, I know it makes it look Bombay red, but it doesn't look like that in real life. It looks like it's true dark walnut, the chocolate color. So what I ran into with the, I'll flip it upside down so we can just look at it, but I don't want to keep holding this thing. What I ran into with the brown mahogany was because these two woods are from different eras, different trees, even if they were harvested at the same time from the same forest or what, even sometimes the same tree itself, the orientation of the wood will be completely different. This Honduran mahogany has a tendency to be more naturally brown. So then once it got a hold of the dark walnut, it just stayed kind of dark walnut. Well, this mahogany here, even though it's Honduran, it wanted to go, if you were to just clear coat it, excuse me, if you were to just clear coat it, it wanted to go Bombay red. And that's kind of just, that's the luck of the draw when you're working with Honduran mahogany, or especially like African mahogany. Honduran is a lot safer. It's typically always more brown or tan, but or sometimes even strawberry blonde and all that jazz if it has chatoyancy. But I say that to say this: as soon as I started staining it with the brown mahogany, the very initial stain coats, she started trying to go a Bombay red very quickly. Now I went ahead and continued with my real thin tinted nitrocellulose lacquer with the brown mahogany, hoping that within about 5 to 6 coats, it would start getting a little bit more brown than it was mahogany. But I don't think it was the stain color as much as it was just this natural wood that you can see beneath that surface. Is a very, it's beautiful. I mean, it looks like a piano. It looks like a really beautiful vintage piano. But we were shooting for a more brown look. But the actual mahogany itself forced me to, after I hit about 8 to 9 coats, probably more than that, it was probably like 11 to 12 coats, super thin. I realized this ain't gonna work. I'm gonna end up having to paint it damn near blacked out to get it to look dark. But then the nitro coats will be so thick, even though I had sprayed it over like a week and a 2 or 3 day long period. If you cross that threshold of too many coats, it'll take it months to cure. And we didn't want that with this guitar. I could have gone ahead and shipped it, but it would have always had a bit of softness to it. So took a 400 grit sandpaper. I told Eric, I told you that I stripped it. I should have clarified. I didn't use like a chemical, like a lacquer or aircraft stripper to strip it off. I sanded off that material, took it back down to almost the raw mahogany. There was still some of the stain tint in there from just, the end grain, which was fine. But I took it back down to with a 400 grit and started over and went over to Woodcraft and bought some actual dark walnut. Just remember that dark walnut. Brown mahogany turned to Bombay on me. The dark walnut came right out of the gate. Was able to let's see if I think I've got. Yeah, this should show you this. Now this is the nitrocellulose lacquer. After I stained it with a denatured alcohol blend with the dark walnut and achieved the base coat stain, then I was able to come in with the brown. And this is about you fill the bottle about 80% full, and then I put about 20 drops of the dark walnut in there, and it's pretty dark. It'll spook you a little bit, thinking that oh man, it's going to turn blue. Well, let me say that. I say that to say this. Yeah, I'm pretty much. I tend to go straight to the finish line on my darkness. But if you were new to this, maybe start out just a little bit lighter than that. But I like the idea of coming out of the gate really dark, and I want to achieve my color within about 3 to 5 coats. And then if I have to, this will get put over on the side and I'll go pure clear, and I'll spend the next 7 to 10 coats finishing it out with just clear. But I was able to stay fairly dark with. Well, I take that back. I did. There was one point in the spray job where it wasn't nearly that dark, as I was just kind of achieving the transparency between the middle of the neck and then the darkness blending into the body. It was a little bit of trickery where sometimes I would tint this a certain tint when I'm spraying this area down here, and I went ahead and broke the rules on this right here. What I had planned on doing. This body was in such rough condition compared to my workmanship here. It was going to be virtually impossible for it to look good. So what I ended up doing was buffing this down a little bit with like a quad alt steel wool, and then I taped off the back and I taped off the front. Anything that was perpendicular to the side surface there. And then I even kind of covered this area here with blue tape. Keep in mind the whole body's completely covered up. And then I came in, and after I had my neck where I wanted it, I removed all of the tape. See, initially I had this perfectly taped off, the body separate from the neck, achieved the neck color, was able to open up the paper and check, so yeah, I'm definitely there. Then after I removed all that and started blending it in, then I sprayed this interior surface here and this interior surface here in order to achieve a guitar that looks like it has never had a neck replacement for the most part. I mean, if you're putting it under the light, if you're really scrutinizing it, you can tell. But my theory is if you've got to scrutinize it to tell where I started or stopped, then I did a hell of a good job on the blend. And it looks good, it feels good, it's beautiful, it plays incredible. Just it's off the charts. I don't really have time to start playing Angus Young or any jazz, but I might do. I might I might do a little bit of just chord work at the end of the video or something like that. But primarily the reason I don't want to play it on camera is because right now it sounds like a banjo because I'm having problems with this pick guard. So so everything might sound okay on the camera or it might sound like crap. I don't really know and don't really care because the guitar's not finished. And what's so difficult about doing these videos, the guitar, honest to God, does not come together until the last 30 minutes. And it's so frustrating to try to, do the videos and show people what you're doing and your thought process and your intent, and then answer questions of people asking, questions that they don't realize are, you know, either kind of silly or ill-informed or just that ill-informed, because I got a lot of guys that were leaving messages based on, well, I saw this other guy do this and he didn't do that, he didn't do that truss rod, or he didn't use. And I finally got to the point where it's like, you know what, just F it, I don't really have time to answer ignorant questions like that. So just do the job, build the guitar, get it back to, get it back to its playable state, and then here at the last 11 o'clock hour, just make discoveries that you really had no idea was about to surface, and then back up and punt and do a video like this. So let me get this stain off the table. All right, let me check the time. Not too bad, 16 minutes. This is the 5th, if not 7th time I've done this video over a 3-day period. And I realized that I kept uploading the video, and as soon as it would almost be uploaded, I was like, oh, hell no, it's just, I'm not there yet. I've got to do more work, because I was explaining what I was discovering 2 nights ago, because I spoke to Eric about 3 nights ago, and man, we were both all excited. I was like, yeah, man, all I got to do is just screw the pick guard down, drop the pups in, wire them up, she's ready to rock and roll. And then it's like everything that I started assembling, there was an issue with it, whether it's this pickup surround is too tight, this one's too loose, or the pick guard won't fit, it's too narrow. It's just a boatload of things. The vibrato arm won't clear. There's nothing I can do about certain things like that. But I just ran into all these things where I was joking with Eric the other night. I said, yeah, I'll shoot straight. I mean, there were a few times over several weeks back where I just wanted to take the damn thing out in the backyard and set it on fire because it truly humbled me from that perspective of like, oh shit, man, there was a ton more stuff that, not complaining, just explaining that it's like, man, it really humbled me actually from day one. But it's a beautiful guitar. It really is beautiful. And it's an SG. And what I mean by that, this is pretty important, and I gotta discuss this because it'll help you guys that might be considering an SG. And I'll try not to spend too much time with this. I explained to Eric's like everything about once I set it up about 3 weeks ago, because I was playing this guitar 3 weeks ago with frets, getting, as I was leveling them, polishing them, dressing, blah, 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 all that jazz, getting it to, like I call it jazz standards. And I noticed very quickly that I loved the guitar. Everything about it was really incredible. The balance, everything, just, Eric electing to put the heavier bridge on here helped with the weight and the balance. But I noticed very quickly, it's like, man, I want to get this thing away from me as quick as I can, just the way I don't like having a Stratocaster around. I love a Stratocaster. It's the most unbelievably comfortable and phenomenal playing guitar. The design, they came so much right out of the gate with a near perfect design that if you ever start playing a Strat, it's almost impossible to start playing something else. And kind of, it is for me. And I'll leave it at that. Same thing with the SG. I have not played or owned an SG in an awful long time. And I realized, man, there's a lot of things about this guitar. I love it. It's incredible. The upper access, even for doing jazz chordal stuff, I could do, little chordal work and like Chad, I almost told you said your last name, Chad. Well, Chad Garrett, because you mentioned you, I sold Chad Garrett a flying V, and Chad, I appreciate you leaving messages there now. It's really cool. But Chad was talking about how, yeah, I like doing inverted chords and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know if I don't think I ever really do that. And I started tinkering with that a little bit, and I got it. And in order to do that type work, you need that incredible access. So going full circle here, I realized I got to get this thing out of here, or I'm going to end up selling all of my Les Paul replicas, my Gretsch 6120 big box, and either getting a SG and a Strat, and I don't want to do that. So, and Eric and I were talking about this, and he was like, yeah, we both came to the conclusion that most guys who truly bond with an SG, whether it's Tony Iommi, which I never really knew who that guy was until somebody commented a few weeks back, and Tony Iommi had put his strap button here, and I think Eric clarified to me that he actually did a 24 fret version on his custom guitar, because all these things were beginning to reveal themselves to me when I restored this guitar. I realized, and I'm going to go back to what I was talking about. I was telling Eric the other night, I was like, I got to tell you, man, S. Gibson, they really, really missed the mark in 1962 or one, whenever they introduced this guitar. If they had have introduced it with a 24 fret scale, this thing would have been, it would have changed guitar history like no one ever knew. I don't know if anybody else was doing that, but they already had the, well, look at that. They already had the, that's the first time I've got to do this, because I only put these pickups in a couple of nights ago. But they already had the spacing, even with their original location. They still could have done the 3 pickup guitar with a 24 fret layout. And you talk about an absolutely insane guitar for anything: jazz, funk, rock, blues, you name it, classical, very much so, because of the ability to reach that second octave. So going full circle, it hit me. It's like, Angus Young, which I don't really like rock and roll. I'm not a big rock and roll fan like the Angus Young type, AC/DC, whatever the name of the band is, Tony Iommi, Black Sabbath. I don't really care for that type of music. I like the rockabilly. I always talk about that because it's more jump, blues, blah blah blah. Country. So it still has the rock tinge to it, but most of the guys that gravitate to the SG, be it Angus Young, Tony Iommi, I guess. I'm sure there's other guys out there, and even Eric was telling me about Derek Trucks, and him. It's like, yeah, that's true. Once they bond with this guitar, you very rarely see them playing anything else. It's a very loyal following once you acclimate to that design. And I think, if anything, it's because this design is on the verge of being the most brilliant design ever put together. But they had some major effing mistakes with this guitar that they never corrected. So I'll try not to start throwing this guitar under the bus, but I began to see all these things. Are like, what a. So I'll go ahead and bitch a little bit about this. This Batwing pick guard hole, replicating the Stratocaster design with pickups that weigh 3 times as much as a single coil, that's absurd. When I installed this black Batwing pickguard on here, killed the tone. And it's so sad, because I was playing this guitar acoustically, and it was just alive and breathing, and it just was so unbelievable. But then once I installed this pickguard, it killed the tone. And I have to be honest, because it's not me. It's nothing I did, because we did a phenomenal job. I did, installing the neck and all that jazz. I won't start talking about that again. But I covered that in extensive detail, where I was re-engineering this whole installation of this thing and making certain that it went together and sounded, like a tone monster. And it does. It sounds incredible. And I even wrote on my note list over here at the very top, after I wrote down all these 7 or 8 things that are wrong with the design and the things that I'm fighting, I wrote down at the top, it's not an acoustic guitar, it's an electric guitar. It was never intended to sound even as good as it does right now. And when I say it killed the tone, it killed the tone from what I had of achieved. What I had achieved got dismantled by screwing this $20 piece of plastic down on the front. And there's really no way around it unless you went. And that's when I began to look at where they were originally in 1962. They were. Let's look at it right here. So we're looking at their. This would be a 1961 or two, whatever the hell the first year was that they came out. 21st fret, 22nd fret, 23rd fret would always go at the end. Boom, there it is. There's your 1962 24 fret Gibson Les Paul SG, that you don't have to have that piece of plastic now because your fretboard continued out, even if it cantilevered like a Gretsch, a Duojet or 6120, or even like the modern Fender where the fretboard just hangs over a little bit to get that extra scale. So they would not have even had to have relocated their pickup. Everything, they still could have done the triple pickup. Why? That makes no sense why that didn't take place. Probably because they had no idea what could have been achieved with that design, because of just everything that I've said up to this point. And also, see, they were on the right path by this tenon. You can see this tenon goes up to about this point right here. So they had just a little bit more length in their tenon. They probably knew on the front end. Larry Allers was the guy that did a lot of their whitewood work, where he's doing the forms and stuff. I guarantee you there were some possibly heated arguments about you can't cut out this much material in a body that thin and expect it to not be problematic. So they were probably coming out of the gate on the front end with a fairly strong guitar that was only routed for the neck pickup. And when they routed for the legs and the feet, they didn't butcher out the body like they did in this guitar, where they literally routed out the size of $50. It's absurd. And I'm not complaining, I'm just explaining what I discovered, and we all know. But, you had all the solid wood left in here, keeping the body from trying to either cup back or cup forward, warpage. And but with this, the swimming pool route, I don't know, it's irrelevant, because quite frankly, as I said, I don't really care anymore, because I don't want to play an SG anymore, and I'm not being negative about this guitar. And I think the world of Eric, and Eric knows that this is not personal, but I just realized there's so many things that even if once I got all that corrected, it still feels so alien to all the other traditional guitars that I've always played, that I don't want to have to do that conversion. Just like if you're like a lot of us, I love classical guitar, the way it sounds, the way it feels and plays, but it's a nightmare going from a classical guitar that you got accustomed to then going to something like this. It's just night and day. So anyway, they missed a hell of an opportunity right there, and it took Tony Iommi to finally be the one, or maybe someone before him, that says, if you're going to build me a signature SG, it's going to be a 24 fret. And I'm only repeating what Eric told me. I don't know if all of Tony's guitars are 24 fret, but if I was going to buy an SG or build an SG, just for that to be my primary player, that's exactly what I would be building. And I would be building it per late 50s, early 60s specs, where you don't have that triple pickup pattern. That's overkill. And you leave all that wood in, and you have the pickup surround that actually has some substance to it and keeps the pickup very stable within that pickup ring. See, they already had the design from the 50s, even though once you got up to this a little bit more narrow design up here, if you had have gone with a shorter leg and a real stiff screw, or maybe a spring, or a real wide radius diameter, excuse me, a wide diameter spring, well, man, it would have stabilized that pickup if there was any sort of issue. But with this design right here, I'm gonna have to come in here, and it won't even tilt. See, it won't even lay flat right now. So I'm gonna be having to come in here with some heavy foam in order to get that to tilt forward. So it's just, again, not complaining. It's just discoveries that I made with the design that hit me when I realized, oh crap, okay, I didn't think about that. But now that we're here, let's just tough it out and do that work. So anyway, just keep all this in mind if you're getting ready to build a SG with a bat wing configuration. I personally think this pickup is way too heavy for that. And just imagine if you came in and routed out for a third pickup, man, there wouldn't be any material left in the pick guard. It would probably be ridiculous how flexible it would get. Okay, so I spent a lot more time just going off a tangent there, but I'll be damned if I'm going to erase this video and try to repeat what I just covered. So I know Eric enough that I was comfortable enough to do this video and let him know that, how I feel about the SG, and not particularly just this guitar, but the whole design in general. This will be the last one I probably ever do, just because it's so different, and it's a very difficult guitar to build. And so we'll leave it at that. But let me look at my note here and see what I might have, what I do need to cover now, because I got to talk about this pick guard layout, and this is going to be for the client primarily, but you guys can keep this in mind as well. Okay, so when Eric sent me this body and this pick guard, we both knew that it wasn't the original pick guard that came on the guitar. We were both hopeful that it would fit, it would work. And I was thinking about it last night, and I even mentioned it in one of the past videos from 2 or 3 nights ago. I was like, oh man, I kind of dropped the ball, and I didn't verify that this pick guard fit perfectly. And in hindsight, it hit me. I was like, no, I didn't drop the ball. I knew that this pick guard, I didn't want this pick guard dictating any decision I made on the very front end about the restoration, because I knew that I have the ability, to make my own pick guard templates and my own pick guards out of either parchment or black or whatnot. So wasn't worried about, if I came up here and these screw locations, none of them lined up or nothing centered up. I wasn't worried about eventually giving Eric a call and going, hey man, this pick guard must have come off of a ukulele or something, yeah, or just joking, of course, that nothing about it is lining up. And I was kind of shocked a few nights ago of how little it lined up. It did line up at this screw location right here, just barely, but it did line up fairly well, good enough for even this job. At these 4 locations were just about perfect. And when I say these 4 locations, only because they put both pickups perfectly in line with the original location of the bridge. So when I saw that right there, I realized, okay, worst case scenario will be reworking or dealing with issues up here. But then it hit me, I was like, well crap, that's 6 locations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are literally the actual screw locations in the body are about 1/8 of an inch further apart total, 1/16 of an inch on each side. You can't tilt the screw and get that to go in. These 4 locations up here, every one of these locations are on about a 45 to 50 degree angle. If this is the flat plane, they're on about a 50 to maybe 55 degree angle, about 1/16 of an inch further in that direction. Same thing here, 1/16 of an inch further in that direction. So not only do they need to be higher, but they also need to be shifted forward. This one is almost 1/8 of an inch. So it lets you know that the discovery is, well, it's not the original pick guard. So that's not Gibson's fault. This might be from a 1986 or a 1998 or a 2014 that's, I don't know, just got played a lot. It looks incredible. So with that said, after we spent all this time doing this real delicate historical restoration, I didn't dare come in here and touch any of these screw locations, especially after 2 nights ago, where I literally was effing, you know, just sick of having to go back to Eric, not in a complaining fashion, but having to go back to Eric now and go, oh man, everything was great right at the point where this pick guard is nowhere near fitting. It looks great. It looks okay right now, but I don't want to be the one that makes the call. Yeah, okay, let me just glue some toothpicks down in the original locations and then take my 16th inch drill bit. Within about 3 minutes, I'll have 6 screws put back in this body and everything will be fine and hidden right up to the point to where this guitar goes for appraisal 6 months from now, 6 years from now, 10 years from now. And that type of stuff done in a 1950s Les Paul Jr. or something of incredible value on the marketplace, or God forbid, like a 59 Les Paul Sunburst or something like that, would be horrific to the valuation. Everything about this guitar is so uh, intact that's one of the primary reasons I wanted to do this restoration, because I knew that we'd be able to take it back very close to historically accurate. So with that said, Eric, the solution is, if you want to go with this pick guard, which is lining up beautifully from basically, if you drew a center line, if you drew a line across that right there, everything from here down is fine. It would just require that I either re-drill these locations in this pick guard, and they look like hell, in order to move the screws, which I have thought about that, but then I'd have to come in with some black epoxy in the bottom corners and kind of hide those sins. But if you look real close, you would see it. But it's a little bit additional work, but we're kind of at that point to where something's going to have to be done. Either I bastardize this body by putting little mahogany toothpicks in it and trying to stain them walnut and make them disappear. But if this thing goes under the microscope of the George Gruen types in the world, then yeah, that's going to kill value in the guitar. Does it matter? I don't. You might not care. And am I indifferent? Almost, because I'm ready to get the guitar to Eric so he can plug the damn thing in and enjoy it, and not have me, cork sniff everything about the guitar. So I get that he never called me up and said, I want a historically accurate Lloyd's of London restoration. He just wanted a guitar, and I'm going to leave it at that. So with that said, let me know what you want me to do, Eric. Or I could pull all this apart now, because see, I have blue tape under here where I came in with a fine art marker, and I identified all of the differences. And I've already done this 3 or 4 times, even in a couple of videos. I actually showed it in one of the videos. I measured across the distance between this screw location to that screw to that screw, that one to that one to that corner, this one to that corner, so that you could, what is it called, triangulation. You could triangulate a pick guard that you might have in your arsenal, or either I could machine a new pick guard, per parchment or per black. And then if I do that, that would be an additional cost. And the only thing that would cause that cost to be, I'm not going to say expensive, but not cheap, is because I would actually have to make the actual pick guard per 1969 specifications. I'm just saying it would have to be done, and that would take, a few hours just to do that. And then once you have that pick guard laid out, but the reason I'm saying this is because every one of these screw locations, they're all historically accurate, and they've never ever once had someone shove a toothpick in it and hit the top of it with a black Sharpie. And that's what I meant by, if we've taken it this far, I want this decision to be Eric's. But after you get an authentic 1969 SG pickguard, batwing pickguard template laid out identical to all the original screw locations, because you can see it's exactly what that is. That is per 1958 um, um, specs. Everything about those locations. If you had a 1958 uh, Explorer and you needed a pick guard, well, then there it is. I can machine that. I'm not saying I want to, but once I have the Batwing profile, then it would be a simple matter of double tape attaching it here, machining it out, beveling it, drilling these locations, and then once these locations are drilled, bevel those locations to receive the authentic #3 all parts stainless steel pack of 20 Gibson size pickguard screws. So what does it look like? Well, it looked like a 1969 Gibson, and that's exactly what those screws are. They fit perfect, but it's an enormous amount of work building a pickguard. Not so much an Explorer pickguard because I've built so many of them, but this one right here, you would be working with machining certain areas flat, like the end there. Everything on the inside would be flat walled, and then you would be doing the bevel work on the outside per whatever that pitch is. And it looks like it's pretty close to a 45 degree, but I've got 45-degree bevel bits and I've got 60-degree and stuff like that. So I would be able to achieve that with relative ease. And the primary reason I want to talk about building a custom pit guard is, in case I forget, and I'll shoot straight. This is when I started getting really frustrated with the design. This Maestro here, I don't know if you'll be able to see it when I do this, but the Maestro, the sprung steel right here actually rests right on the edge of the top of the pick guard. I mean, it's literally kissing it, so that once you do your tremolo work, what it does, this thing goes, wow. It doesn't just fold, it doesn't just roll forward. It binds right here, and then it springs up in a weird fashion. Now, I don't want to redesign the Gibson guitar and have my attorney contact them and I have a board meeting with him. I don't really care, but it's so frustrating. It's like you couldn't correct that 30 years ago. You couldn't correct that. Come on, because this vibrato that's on here is identical to the chrome one that came on it. Now, I say that to say this: it could be I'm throwing them under the bus unfairly, because this pickguard might be from an Asian knockoff copy from the 70s, and they didn't. The original pickguard only came up, to this dimension right here. This thing might be a quarter of an inch longer. I don't know. But with that said, if I machine a new pickguard template, I'll be machining it so that it will actually function with the Maestro Lear, and then trying to split hairs and still make it look like, not come in here and square that off. I'm not talking about that, but just make certain that I change that compound radius enough so that it gives a little bit more room for the vibrato to actually function and not bind. Okay, so there's a lot that goes into it when you get involved in something like this. And I was a little bit hopeful that, oh man, yeah, it'll just screw together and everything will be great. And unfortunately, it seemed like the pick guard had an issue. There's an issue here. There's an issue here with this cover where the cover got soldered onto, because this is an aftermarket cover. When it got soldered onto the body, it got flared out really bad in the backside here, and it's binding really bad. Now, is that the end of the world? No, you could just get the pickup where you wanted it and never move it. So I'm not complaining about that, but you do want to have a little bit of movement so that things are adjustable. But it's just that I noticed, like, oh, okay, well, what do I do? Do I sand the pick guard, or do I resolder the pickup cover, or to what extent do I take it? And also, with that said, let's see if I'm through talking about that. Well, let me look at my list and get back on point, because unfortunately, this is turning into just a lot of droning about problems. It's just issues, but But I think I did talk about the happy stuff on the front end, about how well the guitar turned out. Let me just read through this. Okay, okay, let me just read through this so I don't get off track. The neck and bridge pickup, the pole spacing on both of these pickups that are in this body are right at about 52 millimeter. What I'm holding in my hand here is an authentic PAF reproduction. Between each pole piece is exactly 50 millimeter. Uh, Somewhere around like I think it's 1 in 31 30 seconds, up to like 2 and 1/16 of an inch or something like that. This is a Gibson spacing. But what's really odd, so 50 millimeter for the Gibson spacing. The fender spacing is about 51 to 53 millimeter between each pole. And what's really odd, these two pickups, but they're labeled Gibson on the back, they're 52 millimeter. But when I look at this guitar straight on, the both E strings are just barely visually in line with the edge of the pole piece. I can't change the pole pieces, but it might have a weird tone to it in this position. It's not bad down here at 52 millimeter. And even though I haven't cut these saddles yet, I want these to be perfectly centered with the saddle, so it's an authentic like 2 inch spacing or whatever that number is. I can't think of what the authentic spacing is. Why? Because that's where I install the neck. Okay, that's how I centered the neck based on the bridge and the saddles, and that I call it the trapezoidal path of the high E and the low E. And you don't install your neck cattywamped in order for it to properly pass across a neck pickup that's not original, even though these are both Gibson. So that was the first bit of an issue. So I say that to say this, it's fine, it'll play. But if you ever elect to change this pickup here, Eric, make certain that you go with the Gibson spacing, which is about 50 millimeter or 1 and 31 30 seconds of an inch center to center. Okay, so that was issue number one. And even though this is wider, and I hate to just keep drawing on and on and on about this, but because I took this up to a 1 in 23 30 seconds inch width nut, the string spacing center from the low E to the high E on my Gibson nut here is actually slightly wider than your traditional Les Paul, even at 1 in 23 30 seconds. And I still built a wide enough neck. There's plenty of blues bending there. You're not going to be slipping off the side of this one, trust me. And nor are you going to be slipping off up here. So even with the wider nut spacing for the strings, it still just barely came up. If I had have gone with a traditional nut, the high E string especially, well, both of them, would not even be going anywhere near kissing that. Okay, so splitting hairs there, but that you go in a studio, that type of stuff's critical because the high E and the low E will be coming in at different volumes than the middle four strings. Okay, bridge gold surround is flaring. I already talked about that where it got soldered. Nothing I can do about that really. The neck pickup tilt support frame, I'll have to foam it. I already talked about that. It's no big deal. But just making that statement that I won't be leaving it as half-ass sloppy like that. It'll be tilted. Well, not much. It'll be tilted a little bit. But the whole idea about this design, they're not slanted, is what I'm saying. But at a minimum, I will have to put foam in it in order to bring it up so it's not rolling back. Body has serious bulge at the fretboard, as well as the bridge location, distorting the pick guard. And I knew this on the very front end, so this is not a discovery that I wasn't expecting, but I didn't expect it to be this extreme. Okay, at some point in the past, this guitar probably got an orbital sander put on the top of it, and they probably left the bridge in there when I don't, it's irrelevant. But all I know is, and I'm sure Eric is aware of this from having owned this body so long, up under this bridge location, it flares up considerably. Now, I didn't want to come in with a router and start routing off the top of this body. I just always knew, if anything, I could come in and machine out the bottom 2 plies of the pick guard in order to allow the pick guard to cover it like a hood and let any distortion in the body just be concaved up into that. Even though it convexes on that location right there, the back of the pick guard would be concave to receive that effed up distortion. If you just put a screw in that corner right there, what it does, it just rolls over, and it's trying to leave. It's leaving a goalie. Okay, so no big deal. You get a screw in there, but right now, if you just shot those screws in there, the pick guard is coming up and humping over that hump. But where it's a bit of a problem is up here. It flares up a little bit, and the main solution here, which I don't want to do this, but this is the way you could do it. You could come in with a chisel, and whatever the plane is of the body, I could chisel not what's noticeable, but what's directly up under the pick guard, because the pick guard comes up here and it rolls up. But I could chisel that off and then restain it, and everything would be up under the body. Excuse me, but if I do that, I might as well just re-drill all these locations. So I say that to say this: when I do the pick guard work, regardless of what I do, I could just just screw it down and say to hell with it, not worry about it, and just let it flare up. But it's literally, there's going to be a pretty serious gap right there on both sides, and that's not me. That's just the body. Okay. So just be thinking about that, Eric. And if you want my opinion, I'll kind of give you. But I say, if anything, I would prefer, let's do some trickery to the back of the pick guard in order to get it to flatten out a little bit better. But these 4 locations right here, or these 6 locations, are going to require, and please understand, a lot of the stuff, it's not really all that important if you're not worrying about the historical aspects of the body, because a lot of the bodies that were worked on over the past, you'll pull pickup covers off and you'll find toothpicks that aren't even glued in. They're just wedged in, But didn't want to do that with this body until I did this video. Okay, what else? So I already talked about the pick guard is too narrow, and in case I didn't clarify, where it is mounted right now is perfect. Everything is lined up and on center. Even if you eventually go to a historically accurate, more narrow pickup in the future, it's going to be a perfect fit to just refasten this pick guard if we were to fasten it, and everything would line back up. And the only problem would be if we change the pick guard, it would need to be wider from the area above the pickups and move forward just a little bit. I already talked about how the vibrato is binding at the edge there. And see the fact that these need to move forward a little bit. What that tells me is that the compound radius on the original pick guard probably did not roll down as much in this area. It might have been identical to this, but just shifted forward a little bit. I'm talking about from this point here to that point there, because there's a considerable amount of real estate right there below the bottom of that screw to indicate that it might have been a little bit shorter, and thus allowing more space for your poker chip to not overlap. And I saw some pictures of where this poker chip is actually not even flush up against it. It's actually binding. It's like, what the hell? Did they not engineer any of that stuff out? And that's when I began to get a little bit frustrated. It's like, well, what do I do? Do I change? I can't change the design. But it just began to be this myriad of all these silly little things that seems like they didn't work out on the front end. Or it may just be because we're building a basket case guitar here. Okay? Tone loss was considerable after the pick guard and the leer, but would probably stabilize after being fully secured. Okay, so initially I said that once the pick guard went on here, it seems like it just sucked the life out of the guitar. It might not, it might come back a little bit once all of this is fastened down properly and it's real secure. But I do know from a volume standpoint, it went off the cliff. Once this pick guard went on here, uh, lost a lot. But that's why I made that note at the top of the guitar. I said, it's an electric guitar. It's not meant to project into an auditorium in an acoustic fashion. So, with that said, I hope I didn't sound like I was whining and complaining and moaning about this, that, and the other. But it just made me realize that, man, so many of these little things seem like they could have been worked out early in the design, or maybe it was they did. The design was perfect when it came out of the gate, other than the fact they missed a hell of an opportunity to market their guitar as, hey, guess what you can do with our guitar? You've got a double octave. That would have been a huge, huge marketing standpoint. And if I was a territorial sales rep for Fender, I would have left them for Gibson just to pitch that right there, because I could have sold a hell of a lot of these back in the 60s if I would have had that right there to pitch. Okay. So maybe they did come out of the gate with the design that they knew was stable, and then once they started cost cutting and trying to do the 3 pickups and electronic stuff, they probably started sacrificing to the point to where even they might have realized, oh man, we screwed up really, really bad. But if we admit it, everyone that bought all of our products that we promised were a certain thing, now they'll know that we were BSing them back in the mid 60s, late 60s and 70s, et cetera, et cetera. So it's one of those, it's not really a self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's like a marketing faux pas, I guess would be the word. Okay, let me check the time. 56 minutes of SG chaos. And I don't think there's anything else to talk about. Let me see if it's in tune. Sounds pretty close. Unfortunately, with these little camera phones, you can't hear the sustain. But it's endless. It's still crystal clear. The pickup would still be picking that up. It's still sustaining. Okay, it just stopped. It's still unbelievably audible. It's beginning to thunder. We're about to get a rainstorm. That one sounds a little flat. Oh, my thumb hit it. The tremolo, the hand tremolo. I mean, it's there. It's anything you want, it's there. And on and on and on and on. It's just it's phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. And that's just that's good fret work. That's a good build. So the guitar, it'll probably eat any other SG alive. Could it sound better? Yeah, it could. But Does it need to? No, not necessarily. So anyway, I hope I didn't sound like I was hating on the guitar, Eric. It's just that I knew that as I was doing all the build, I was kind of dreading getting to that point to where all of a sudden at the end we, screw a $10 piece of plastic down to a 55-year-old Honda mahogany body, neck, ebony fretboard, frets, CA glued in, level dressed, um, mother of pearl epoxied in, tap tone to die for. And because I've got because I've got the strings on it now, I won't really be able to do the tap tone. But let me try to get the spring spread apart so I can let you hear the tap tones. That's all the way down the guitar. It's hard because it's hard to hold those strings. So you get the point. Let's see if we can go down the middle. Okay, so if you get the point anywhere in the guitar, anywhere you tap it, I'm getting a lot of secondary vibration because that's not fastened. And that's what I meant by once this all gets fastened in place, it'll probably be fine. And please understand, this is something I could have just drilled these locations, shot these screws in here, thrown it in a box, and said, "Hey, your guitar's on its way." And I don't think Eric would have ever complained at all. But Eric, I just wanted you to be a part of making that decision whether I do just that and relocate those 6 screw locations, fasten it down, shut my mouth, and let you enjoy your beautiful guitar, because it is off the charts. And the only thing I've got to do is solder the neck and the bridge wiring. Let me make sure I don't bump anything. And I got some issues back here where screws are not catching any wood, so it's kind of typical of doing an old restoration. But the leads for both pickups are too short, so I've got to extend the leads. The neck pickup, actually the neck and the bridge pickup will need to be extended probably about 2 inches in order to not clutter up and cluster the cavity, the control cavity. But these are the authentic Gibson screws that I was talking about that I get from All Parts. And I won't spend much time talking about this because I know it's so close in the end of the video, but just take a look. That's the neck pickup lead, which needs to go right here. It's close, but it's not close enough to work, so that one will have to be extended a little bit, and that will allow me to make certain that it doesn't ground out with the 3-way. And this one is seriously short right here, so same thing. I did test these, even though that's got some nasty solder on it right here, the lead wire in the middle did slide in and out perfectly, so I didn't feel it binding or catching into a solder joint that might have gotten burned through the cloth. So should be fine. But I'll have to extend these. So it's a little bit extra work there, a little bit extra work here on the pick guard. It's kind of part of the job. It's getting to that point where it's like, oh, I got to be careful where I don't redesign the guitar, rebuild the guitar, and spend an extra 4 or 5 days on it, and then Eric might have not have even cared about that type of stuff. So anyway, I hope this was an okay video. This, again, and I should have mentioned this on the front end, this video was not really for anybody viewing the series, other than if you want to just listen to some of the crap that I ran into and had to deal with. Not complaining, of course, as I've already clarified, but just know that coming out of the gate, if you find a basket case online that's really affordable, proceed with extreme caution, because you might be in for a world of surprise, even if you're using authentic Gibson parts from different eras. There may be a lot of variation there. Let's do a weight and balance. In case the camera cuts off, I think it's 7.6 pounds as a finished guitar. And what does it feel like? It feels incredible. It does. It really does feel good as far as the weight and balance. And that's why I mentioned I want to get it out of here so I don't acclimate to it. I don't want to acclimate to it, if that makes any sense. Oh. So just remember it's 7.6 pounds, give or take. All right, see if I can get this in the camera. The only thing it doesn't have is the Tony Iommi strap button. And if you can see that,